Daniel Reed stood in front of the mirror, tugging nervously at the collar of his off-white shirt, the one Emily had carefully ironed, though the creases were lopsided. It had been 3 years since his wife's accident, 3 years of learning how to breathe on his own while pretending everything was fine for his daughter's sake. Tonight felt different, hopeful, terrifying, vulnerable. A coworker had insisted on setting him up on a blind date with a woman named Clare, someone who was said to be warm, interesting, and understanding. He wasn't sure he was ready, but he'd said yes anyway. Maybe a part of him was tired of eating alone, of staring silently at the empty chair across from him after Emily went to bed. The knock came just as Emily returned to the living room with her stuffed rabbit, her eyes shining with childlike excitement. Daddy, that must be her, she whispered. Daniel took a deep breath, opened the door, and froze. The woman standing there held a white cane. Her eyes, unfocused and distant, searched the air softly, but her lips tilted into a warm smile. Hi, you must be Daniel. Her voice was nervous but gentle, full of quiet confidence. For a moment, Daniel's mind scattered, not prepared for this, yet something in her tone pulled him back. Emily ran forward before he could say a word, grabbing Claire's hand with a grin. I'm Emily. Did you know spaghetti's my favorite? Claire laughed, the sound light and melodic, and Daniel felt his guard lower. Dinner was simple, slightly overcooked pasta and burned garlic bread, but Claire didn't seem to mind. She listened closely to their stories, her delicate fingers tapping the edge of her glass as if tracing the moments passing between them. She told Daniel she loved movies, not for the visuals, but the sounds, the emotions they carried. After Emily fell asleep, Claire sat quietly on the sofa and said softly, I didn't tell you because I wanted you to meet me, not my blindness. Then she added something that made Daniel's heart stop. I recognized the sound of loss. He swallowed hard, meeting her unfocused gaze. Somehow she could hear what he hadn't been able to say, and as she walked out later, he realized something strange. This was the first time in years he didn't feel entirely alone. The following days passed in a gentle haze, yet Daniel couldn't stop replaying Claire's words in his mind. I recognized the sound of loss. It lingered, unsettling him with its depth. Every time he thought of her, a strange warmth fluttered in his chest, tinged with fear and something like hope. Emily, completely captivated by Claire, drew pictures of them together. Stick figures holding hands, surrounded by hearts and little stars, and taped them to the refrigerator proudly. One rainy afternoon, a week after their first date, Daniel worked up the courage to text Claire. Her reply came with an immediate invitation. I come by the cafe near my apartment. I'll be there at 4. Daniel was early nervous and not sure what to expect as he sat watching raindrops race down the window. Claire arrived moments later, guided by a young barista who seemed to know her well. She smiled in Daniel's direction as though she could see him perfectly. Hi, Daniel, she said softly. You sound tired. He chuckled uneasily. Is it that obvious? She tilted her head, listening in that strangely attuned way she did. You carry your tiredness like a quiet backpack, heavy but familiar. They talked until the cafe lights dimmed for closing. Claire shared how she'd lost her sight at 19 after a head injury from a car accident that should have taken her life. She described the world she lived in now, not in darkness, but in textures, sound, and memory. Sometimes, she said, I feel more connected to the world now than when I could see it. Daniel found himself opening up to memories of his wife, to the crushing guilt of moving forward, to the nights he'd spent staring at Emily's sleeping face, promising her things he wasn't sure he could give. After leaving the cafe, he drove home with a strange lightness in his heart. Emily was waiting on the porch with her stuffed rabbit, smiling sleepily. Did you see Claire? She asked. Daniel nodded, brushing wet curls from her forehead. Yeah, sweetheart, I did. As Emily drifted off in his arms, he whispered a silent thank you. To the rain, to the laughter shared, to the woman who saw him without seeing it all. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel so empty. As weeks turned into months, Claire became a gentle yet powerful presence in Daniel and Emily's lives. What began as cautious visits turned into nightly dinners, weekend outings, and laughter that Daniel hadn't heard within his home since before the accident. He started noticing the subtle changes, how Emily hummed while doing her homework, how the house smelled of fresh cookies after Claire taught Emily how to bake by touch, or how Daniel's own smile sometimes appeared without effort. One evening, Daniel invited Claire over to help Emily with a school project about family traditions. They piled onto the living room floor, surrounded by colored paper and glue sticks. Emily talked excitedly about how her mom used to braid her hair every Sunday night. There was a softness in Claire's voice when she asked about Daniel's wife, gently pulling threads of memory without unraveling him. After Emily went to sleep, Claire found Daniel sitting by the old upright piano in the corner, an instrument that had gathered dust since his wife passed. He wasn't playing, just running his fingers over the keys absent-mindedly. "She played every night," he said quietly. Claire sat beside him and rested her hand on the keys. Then, without warning, she pressed a few notes. Gentle, familiar, haunting. Daniel's chest tightened. It was the lullaby Emily used to fall asleep to, played by a mother who would never return. "How do you know that?" he whispered. Claire hesitated. "I don't. It just came to me." In that moment, Daniel felt something settle inside him. Not grief, but understanding. Claire wasn't replacing what he'd lost. She was adding light to the shadows. He realized then that opening his heart didn't mean letting go of the past. It meant allowing new love to grow alongside it. When Claire rose to leave, he walked her to the door, but this time, instead of letting her go quietly into the night, he reached for her hand. She paused, her unfocused eyes searching his expression. There were no words between them, just the warmth of hands held, the crackling of a fireplace in the background, and the unspoken promise that this fragile, beautiful thing forming between them might just be worth holding on to. Spring arrived quietly, carrying with it the scent of new beginnings, and Daniel realized just how much had changed in such a short time. Emily was blossoming, her laughter brighter and more honest than he'd heard in years. The home, once shadowed by memories of loss, now pulsed with warmth. Claire's gentle presence had woven itself into their days, her voice like a steady melody stitching fresh hope into the fabric of their lives. One Saturday morning, while Emily played in the yard, Daniel invited Claire to join him on a walk through the neighborhood. As they strolled down the tree-lined street, Claire took his arm without hesitation. A gesture of trust and closeness Daniel cherished more than he could say. They spoke of silly things at first, Emily's new obsession with bumblebees, Claire's fondness for rainy days, but soon the conversation deepened. "I never imagined I'd find something like this." "Again," Daniel admitted, his voice soft. Claire paused, turning her face toward him, though her eyes remained still. "Even the darkest nights," she whispered, "can hold the beginnings of dawn." Her words settled into him like truth. They reached the small park where he had first brought Emily after the accident, trying to make her smile through his own grief. Now he stood there with Claire by his side, and it felt different, lighter. Emily came running across the grass, breathless with joy, holding a daisy chain she'd made. For Claire," she beamed, placing it gently in Claire's hands. Claire touched the flowers tenderly, tears catching in her lashes. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Daniel watched them, and something inside him clicked, an understanding that love didn't replace what once was. It simply made room for more. That evening, after tucking Emily into bed, Daniel walked Claire to her ride. Before she left, he gently cupped her face, his fingers brushing the curls near her ear. "I'm not moving on," he said softly. "I'm moving forward. With you." Claire smiled, wide, radiant, full of love, and reached for his hand. "Then let's walk it together," she whispered. And under the quiet glow of the porch light, Daniel leaned in, his heart steady for the first time in years, and kissed the woman who had reminded him that even after darkness, light comes quietly but meaningfully.